Hi. Um, I did my project on GE Transportation Systems, Erie, Pennsylvania. I titled it the GE Roller Coaster. Right off the bat, I can tell you this will be the easiest 5 minutes of my life. I worked full time at GE 50 or 60 hours a week for 5 years. I could easily talk about the experiences I had there for 20 years full time. Um, Everything started when I got my interview. I got a call from the manager of the unit that wanted to hire me. He had me come in on a weekend day, talked to me, told me he wanted to hire me, and I didn't hear anything for 6 months. Turns out he did the entire interview informally and then went back and did everything he had to do formally in order to get me hired, and that's just how long it took. That's kind of sets the stage for how communication worked at this large company. GE is a huge multinational company. It has arms in everything. Generally, everything is focused around power or electricity. So if there's electricity involved, whether it's a motor for a train or a dishwasher, GE has some form of involvement with it, whether it's GE name brand or one of their subsidiary or partner companies. At one time, GE was the largest employer in the Erie region, as I'm sure some of you are already aware. But it had always become synonymous with kind of a swing back and forth of growth and retraction. There are a few terms that I use throughout my paper, and they're generally just the roles at GE. What I did in this is focus specifically on the building that I have experience in. As said, the company is huge. Even the site uh, is still huge. But what I could do is narrow it down to how one building works, and you could see how throughout the company communication would work. So the keywords are flow leader, which is essentially a frontline supervisor. Above them is business leader, and those are really the big ones you'd need to know. Um, the organizational structure of GE is very difficult to describe. It's very vertical at the top. You have your global and site leadership, and that's like one or two people, and it goes straight down communication. But towards the bottom, it gets increasingly horizontal. For example, a brand new frontline manager may be assigned 40 to 50 workers directly underneath them. So there's a flatness that happens towards the bottom. So I like to say that GE gets everything wrong. They get the worst of both worlds horizontally and vertically as far as communication. Um, GE is a for profit company, obviously. So generally, they work in a very structured style as far as hierarchy and status. What generally happens is you get hired, you're a frontline supervisor. If you survive, and I'll use the term survive, you have a chance of moving up. If you're clever enough and smart enough to make a lot of friends with the old boys club and the old girls club, you might actually move up pretty quickly. But that's generally how it works. Nothing is fair there. So if anyone has any illusions of you go to a place and you're rewarded for everything that you do, GE is not the type of place you need to work at. There were some really wonky setups in the hierarchy, though. For example, there were particular roles of the unionized workforce, which, for argument's sake, we'll put at the bottom of the org chart, even though that's not exactly how it works. Um, there were a few roles uh, in that pool of workers that had specific things to do, like inspectors. Inspectors' jobs are to monitor a product for defects or potential defects. Now, the inspectors work for, or they directly report to, the production team. So right off the bat, you can see someone whose job it is to potentially slow down production works for a production person. Now, the person that would oversee quality, a quality technical advisor or a quality leader, should really be the inspector's supervisor, but they're not. The quality technical advisors are a step up in status above the PTAs, the frontline supervisors, but they don't have any direct reports, even the people that do the work that is in their domain. So GE kind of sets itself up for competition, certainly among the different departments, but even more so among the different individual supervisors. One of the strange things about GE communication is official communication, top down, unilateral, nothing to it, and generally 50% truth and 50% what they don't want you to know. It's either held out or you're out and out lied to. Those are the official communications. The unofficial communications are where you make all your gains. It's where you learn everything. What will happen basically, though, is everything that's done as far as production, defects, all the Six Sigma metrics that they measure everyone by are posted. This is a means of setting up competition among the different areas in a building. Every building has a number of products they make. We'll call the sets of production teams that work on those products units. Those units are pit against each other based on these common Six Sigma metrics. So everyone tends to be out for themselves. For example, some of those units will supply other units with parts in order to build what they build. Well, if one unit knows you're short on a part, they may tailor their production specifically to highlight your shortage. A, because they're in direct competition with you, and if you look bad, they look better. And B, because that gives them an opportunity to hide any other production failures they might be having. So it was actually difficult to get any truthful information from anywhere. Places that would supply parts to my area would not be truthful about what they had and what process it was in and how long it was going to take for them to get it to me, because everything was based on these metrics that were posted weekly and updated for the world to see. And you can be sure that everyone took notice. Your competition, your direct reports, supervisors, etc. So everything was set so that everyone was at each other all the time. And even the roles that should have been working together were not set up in that way. I think maybe the idea was to create checks and balances, but what they really did was create animosity. Let's see. The communication mechanisms they had were little to none, and really you couldn't trust anything. Where you got your information were the informal channels. Generally, information was disseminated through the union. The union had a very specific structure of how their communication would be disseminated, but informally, that's where everyone in the organization would get their information. Kind of a running joke that I put in my paper from a frontline manager perspective is something that we would say once in a while is I would talk to a direct report and they'd say, "What are we doing today?" And I'd say, "Well, I'll tell you after you tell me," because they had the information and I didn't. And everyone knew that going in. So it didn't really give the management any kind of status in the eyes of their direct reports, because in truth, everyone knew that we were getting all our information from them, whether it was part availability, whether it was scheduling. We knew from them what was coming rather than the other way around. And again, that all has to do with the management level not wanting to share information because it was not beneficial to do that. The union pool of workers had protection from the competition that was set up internally by GE. So they had less to gain or to lose from sharing information. So you had to be really skilled at navigating the informal channels of communication to get anything done. What it boiled down to get anything done and be successful is you had to develop good personal relationships with people and be honest and open as much as you could. Honesty was like gold at GE. No one had any, so it was very valuable when you found some. Communication behaviors. GE never really met the organizational needs of its members at all. We would hear about things after they happened. We wouldn't have proper information. Certainly, any of the global initiatives or planning or site leadership plans, we didn't get the information, or I should say, the information we got was slanted very, very much so. They were very much managing the message because they didn't like the messages to get out, because they always had plans, and it made for sort of an atmosphere of mistrust, obviously. So there are some specific examples I talked to in my paper about communication. One example, communication with HR. There was a member of management that got interviewed and hired for a promotion and different job, even with a proposed hire date from the hiring manager of the different unit and the HR manager. As that date got closer, that member of management tried to contact HR and the hiring manager, say, okay, I'm ready. What should I do? And in vain, no replies, nothing, no emails, no phone calls, no return emails, no access to their office to talk to them. Basically, a member of management got hired for a promotion and then never heard about it again. And no one said anything either way. That was it. That was the information this person got. So that's dealing with human resources. So if that's any indication of the value that GE, at least in my building, put on communication, that would really tell you. There was also a business leader. Business leader is the level above PTA or frontline supervisor. There's also a business leader that wanted to get a rise out of his team. So he thought it would be a good idea to tell all of his frontline managers that he was leaving for a different job, and he was going to recommend each of them for his job in the promotion in order to get a bump in production that week. That business leader wasn't reprimanded, or to my knowledge, nothing ever came of that at all. And that's from your supervisor. Not even just as far as hierarchy, but this person you spend 60 hours a week with can out and out lie to you about things, and then tell you to keep it a secret, so that you're working against all of your other PTAs working on the same stuff. That's just the kind of, I would say, that's just the way they pit everyone against each other and made it very aggressive and competitive. It wasn't a very nice place to work. As far as results of things like that, it was a very high stress area. I personally know of 3 people that had what you would probably refer to as nervous breakdowns. I don't have the medical information, so I did not cite that in the paper. However, if 2 of those folks had been around long enough and made enough friends that they were eventually transferred to lower stress jobs, within the company. One of them just never made it back. Um, Quite a few. I can't say most, but I'll say very many of the workers, male and female, had problems at home due to the work, divorces, things like that. And substance abuse was very prevalent as well. Going out and drinking with the upper management was, I would say, encouraged. It was one of the ways that you could make some old boys and old girls friends in order to further your career. That's what you did if you wanted to move up. They had a couple of places they'd go to, and you'd go after work and basically get drunk with people. So they, I can't say encouraged, but it was a very accepted practice to abuse alcohol, etc. Systems of our participation. There wasn't much. Everyone was really on an island. I can say for my part, I started there. I was brand new, and they put me in charge of two areas instead of one by myself on second shift alone, and that was it. So it's not sink or swim. It's push you off a cliff and see if you can fly. Um, those of us that were able to cope generally did it with, sharpening our tongues, and just, aggressive behavior, sarcasm, things like that. That was the language there. Quite often shift changes, which was one of the only consistent forms of communication, shift change meetings. They were basically, I would liken them to battle royales. Everybody would be in a room together and you would take turns barbing back and forth. It was supposed to be, work plans for the day, but it quickly devolved into basically debates and who's more clever and quicker with their tongue and who can win the argument rather than be right about what we're doing at work. But I don't blame the individuals for doing that. That was just what we had to do to survive. And I say survive. Organizational culture. I did cover this in my paper because I wanted to put this example in. You may have heard of the Spartan kind of tradition of giving slightly less food to a group of people to encourage aggression or assertiveness. For example, if there's a table full of 10 people, the people of Sparta, ancient Sparta, would give enough food for 9 to encourage everyone to be assertive. GE very much follows that approach with their competition kind of based setup. Only I say they take it a little bit farther. What GE does is lock 100 people in a cage with no food and throw them only one butcher's knife and say, you have all the tools you need to survive. That's basically what it was like working at GE in Building 6. I was there for 5 years. I served 4 different roles in 2 different units. The unit I was hired in, there throughout those 5 years, there were 3 different BLs because it was so high stress. People were always looking to get out, move. Very high level or a very low level of satisfaction, and just high enough level of not dissatisfied. Another thing that was commonly said is GE will pay you just enough not to leave, but not a penny more. That's pretty much how things worked there. You'd also hear things commonly like, how you doing today? That the answer, the trope answer was living the dream, or another day in paradise. And then you'd have to answer back with, yeah, and they call this work. These were just coping mechanisms that people had to use because the environment was so sick. Cynicism and sarcasm were prevalent among everybody, even upper management. That's just the language they speak there. There's very little positivity. Now, if you know someone that worked at GE in management or in union, they may have a different view of it than I have. Certainly, I'm not speaking for the entire company of, the entire organization of GE. Not even at this one site. I can only speak to the dynamics within, one building, which was three different units at the time. But I can tell you, in some of my roles, I did work with other buildings, other units. There are slight differences, but generally that's the culture there, and the communication is very, very rotten. Um, it's not surprising to me that what has happened to them. It's not surprising that they couldn't come up with a solution with the union. It's not surprising that they had to sell or merge with Westinghouse. Um, and also, it's not surprising to me that the same people that ran GE when it was GE are still running Wabtec now. And it wouldn't surprise me if the culture hasn't changed at all. Thank you.